I was watching World War Z, especially the scenes in Israel where they build massive walls to isolate themselves from the outbreak. And it made me wonder, if a real virus broke out and people had to confine themselves to a single safe location, how many people could you actually fit into one place? And can we fit the entire human population? To find out, I chose a very specific, safe, and isolated piece of land, Little St. James, better known as Epstein Island. Epstein Island is approximately 72 acres. If we assume a standard crowded elevator density, where you're not touching anyone, but you could definitely tell what they had for lunch, you can fit about 4 people per square meter. At this density, the island would comfortably, if awkwardly, hold about 1.16 million people. This is roughly the population of Dallas, Texas. Logistically, this is a nightmare for the plumbing, but geologically, it's fine. The island is mostly volcanic rock. It wouldn't even notice the extra weight. The residents of the neighboring Great St. James might complain about the noise, but the island remains above sea level. But why save only 1.16 million people when Epstein Island can save everyone? To fit all 8.1 billion of us onto 72 acres, the standing room only approach fails. If you try to jam the entire human race onto the island's surface, you'd be trying to fit nearly 28,000 people into every square meter. Physically, this is impossible. You cannot fit 28,000 humans into a square meter of floor space unless you are using a very large industrial blender, which I've been told is unethical, and remarkably, still only the second most illegal thing to happen on this property. So we have to go vertical. We need to build a human cube. The average human has a volume of about 0.07 cubic meters. If we stack all 8.1 billion of us into a solid, neat pile, ignoring the air gaps between limbs, which is a generous assumption, we get a mass of biological material roughly 567 million cubic meters in volume. Assuming we build perfectly vertical, skyscraper-like walls to hold everyone in, this pile would rise approximately 1.95 kilometers into the air. For context, that is more than 5 times the height of the Empire State Building. You are no longer on an island. You are part of a mountain of meat. This is where the physics gets uglier than the island's actual history. First, there is the pressure. The people at the bottom of the pile are supporting the weight of a 2-kilometer-high column of other people. The base of the pile would experience a pressure of about 19 megapascals. This is roughly the same pressure found 2 kilometers underwater. Humans are mostly water, and water is non-compressible, but our structural components, bones, lungs, and cell membranes are not. The people at the bottom would not so much be crushed as they would undergo a phase transition into a semi-liquid slurry. Then there is the heat. The average human body at rest outputs about 100 watts of heat. 8 billion people output 810 gigawatts. For comparison, that's about 100 times the power output of the largest nuclear power plant on Earth. In a normal crowd, this heat dissipates into the air. But in our human mountain, the people in the center are insulated by nearly a kilometer of human insulation in every direction. And as we know, things hidden deep inside this island tend to get buried permanently. There is nowhere for the heat to go. Within minutes, the core would reach lethal, feverish temperatures. And within hours, the internal temperature of the pile would soar past 100 degrees Celsius. The center of the pile would begin to boil. The resulting steam, unable to escape through the pressurized slurry at the base, would eventually trigger a phreatic eruption. Essentially, the island would suffer a volcanic explosion. At this point, anyone with access to a private jet would be scrambling to delete their flight logs, but instead of magma, the ejecta would be. Well, let's just call it organic debris. Finally, we have the weight on the Earth itself. If this were a permanent mountain, the planet's crust would slowly sag over thousands of years. But we don't have that kind of time. Long before the geology can react, the sheer fluidity of the meat mountain means it would suffer a catastrophic structural failure, instantly landsliding outwards and burying the entire surrounding Caribbean Sea under a tidal wave of humanity. The good news is that the problem of the island's dark history would be permanently solved. It would be buried under a geologic layer of bone and pressurized carbon, eventually becoming a very strange oil deposit reserved exclusively for billionaire investors of the future. As for the rest of us, we'd probably wish we'd just taken our chances with the virus. So, could Epstein Island save humanity during a global outbreak? Probably not. If a zombie outbreak ever happens, stick with the giant walls from World War Z. They're considerably less explosive.